Hello all, and welcome to this little snippet of the Actual Magician's bookshelf. Yes, I am an actual magician, and I thought people might like to see what I'm about to start reading, what I'm continuing to read, both fiction, non-fiction, both for the channel and otherwise. This is the real reading of an actual magician as far as I am reading at the moment. And obviously I've got a load of catching up to do because we've spent the last 3 years particularly working on Spiritual Key to the Tarot, which is now published. So I have a lot of reading to catch up on. And I tend to have about 14 books on the go on average. It's usually around that number. That's been the case ever since I was a kid, I guess. I've always had a lot of books on the go. I sort of read them in pairs or simultaneously, read 4, then put those 4 down if I get about halfway through them and read another 4, and just generally juggling a load of books at the same time. Now, this pile here, particularly this first book by Lon Milo Duquette, is a review copy, so I'm looking forward to reviewing this. I think Lon's work with the tarot is really, really powerful, really experienced. He's a very, very good storyteller, and this is mainly a book, it looks, to work with his very Enochian, Golden Dawn, Thelemic deck. And I'm going to have to go and dig out my copy of that. It's usually around. I can remember seeing it when Lon gave a talk at one of the tarot cons in particular, and he'd laid out the cards, and when they were coloured, it was really powerful seeing it. It was like an Enochian tablet in real form, and to have that as a deck and to be able to then move those around, it's really important. And of course we've got all of the correspondences, the zodiacal, the I Ching and so forth. I'm thinking about doing a video on the tarot and I Ching because it's something that Crowley used a lot. He used I Ching far more than the tarot. It's something that is my secondary form of divination. I use tarot and I Ching. I've gone through phases of using the I Ching for a long time. So I've got plenty of books on that, from the classics to more contemporary books, and I can recommend some of my favourite I Ching books and so forth. But I'm looking forward to working with this and doing a proper review of it. Lon has a very good, straightforward way of introducing the Kabbalah and so forth. So yeah, I'm looking forward to doing a proper review of that very shortly on the channel. Probably an interim review because I usually like to read books for about a year at least, or use a deck for about a year before I even think about reviewing it. But obviously it's helpful to promote a book when it's first launched, so I'll do an interim review of how I find this and why I would recommend it to other people as well, to make sure that people looking for this sort of work are actually going to know about it. Similarly with Deja Whitehouse's The Lady and the Beast, this is specifically focusing on Frieda Harris and Crowley. I bought this a little while ago. It's a very academic book, and I'll be interested to compare that to my own thoughts and feelings about Frieda Harris and Crowley, and particularly their relationship. This goes into her life a little bit more, so it'll be interesting to see which resources Deja's used in this. Obviously it's going to be very well footnoted, noted, or chapter noted, indexed, and there'll be a good bibliography in here as well. And here we have, the York collection, which I'm reasonably familiar with. All of these are references in the York collection at the Warburg. OTO archives she's had some access to by the looks of it. Tate Gallery archives and so forth. So, I'm looking forward to reading that. Hopefully that will be very insightful and fill in any gaps about the partnership between Frida Harris and Aleister Crowley. Then I'll probably start reading those simultaneously along with the fiction books that I'm reading at the moment. I picked this up recently. It's a very easy to read book by the looks of it, and it's just a nice Dungeons and Dragons book. It's got an Otyugh as a familiar for this party of ne'er-do-wells who are literally the fallback party, so I quite like the humour of there being a sort of fallback party. It's also because I started watching an anime recently called, what's it called? Something like Critical Level or Level Up, something like that, which is a Japanese anime of a world in which Dungeons and Dragons type dungeons keep appearing, and their special teams who go into them, and the story follows someone who is just like a level 1 character but keeps getting dragged into all sorts of other events, and something happens, and it's surprisingly intense. I think this is very light-hearted, but the series I'm watching at the moment is surprisingly intense. So I'll tend to read a fiction book in the evening when I get time, and sometimes in the day if I need a break from something else. And so I'm looking forward. I have made a start on that, but I've not got very far into it yet. Similarly, Dust, I'm almost finished with this. I love the TV series. I started to read the first book called Wool, and then the second book, Shift, and the third book, Dust. So I started to read Wool before the series was even announced, and I just struggled with it for some reason. It wasn't just the right book for me at the time. And then I watched the Silo TV series, which takes us really to the start of the second book, Shift. I think it's on its second series with the wonderful Rebecca Ferguson in it. And so I basically flipped through the first book, Wool, and sort of caught up on it to the series. Then I fully read the second book, Shift, and I found it really powerful, really profound, but quite a drag. It was really hard going sometimes to read, just the subject matter, the endless sort of time that passes and all sorts of other things that happen to the characters. And I must admit, I've struggled with this third one. I started to really enjoy it, and then it just seemed to drag a little bit, and I was almost tempted to start just flicking through it to get the main synopsis or the story, but I have persevered, so I'm almost at the end of that. Similarly, I'm enjoying Fleet of Knives. This is the second of the Embers of War series by Gareth Powell, and I'm almost finished with this. I've been loving this. I read the first one, which was what was the first one called? Embers of War. Of course, the first one was called Embers of War, and I just loved it. I love the characters. It's very Ian Banks light, and unfortunately, as Ian Banks has passed away for a while now, there will be no more culture novels, which I really loved. One of my favourite series of science fiction operas. I recently turned my brother on to those, and this is a sort of lighter version, but a different version of a sort of future culture, AI spaceships. I love the former warship Trouble Dog. And there's a lot in the first one, Embers of War, about a trauma after military events and after war, and how society and individuals come to terms with life just after a significant war and so forth, in which certain atrocities have been committed. And then this sort of picks up on the story a little while later, and it's called Fleet of Knives, and I'm loving that. I'll be quite sad when I finish it. I was very sad when I finished the first one. There was another series I was reading called Old Man's War, and I loved the first one. looked at all of the reviews of the second and third ones, because again, I felt like bereft when I finished reading the first one, wanted to know more about what would happen to the characters, and then it just seemed from the reviews that the second book and the third book maybe really didn't follow up on that, and it was a bit like watching Dexter. It's best to watch the first 3 series or maybe the 4th series and then just stop watching it so you don't feel disappointed about the lack of story and sense of the character and things as it then wheedles its way out in the last couple of series. So, but this one, I was encouraged to read the second one, and I am enjoying it as much as the first. Then Nation, which I'm a little way through, and I'm reading this one quite slowly. It's a Terry Pratchett book, but not a Discworld book, and Charlotte recommended this to me, and I'm just loving it. It's beautiful book, beautiful characters, beautiful thinking, pure Terry Pratchett, I guess, and very different to the Discworld. And there's some wonderful turns of phrase, some wonderful ideas that Pratchett always manages to put into a single light sentence just to twist something into something gaspable when you're reading. So I'm slowly reading through this because I'm not devouring it like, say, for example, this one I'm just purely enjoying. And then I'm going to start reading this quite soon. I was listening to Dr. Yamada on a radio interview, and the book sounded interesting, and I'm an aficionado of Japanese culture and the language, so 14 energies of listening, that does sound useful, and her explanation of some of them was fascinating and thought-provoking. So I went and bought the book, and this is called Kiku, the Japanese Art of Good Listening. And so I'll probably be reading most of those simultaneously alongside these review copies of The Tarot Architect. This was sent as a review copy at request. This was this I bought because I'm obviously fascinated by that. Then for my own stuff, I'm currently reading, or I'm about to start reading, I should say, This Is Why You Dream, because I have a stack of books on dreaming and sleep, both the history of sleeping, bizarrely enough there is a subject about the history of how we slept and how we used to sleep and how that differs, and the psychology and physiology of sleeping. And so this is all part of filling in some gaps and background reading for the second Magister. Charlotte and I are currently working on the first one, just reformatting it more than anything. And the second Magister is all about Yesod, and it's all about the unconscious, the history of the unconscious, NLP, psychotherapy, dream work, practical work, astral work, everything that relates to Yesod. So that's got to be fairly up-to-date and comprehensive in terms of the current research into sleep. So I'm reading that for that. Hopefully it'll be an enjoyable book as well. It's not just a workbook. And this I literally saw in a second-hand shop and just fascinated me, the 10 Types of Human. Obviously, for those who follow my Kabbalah stuff and interest in Kabbalah, then it's anything with the 10 types of, I'm immediately going to think, I wonder if that will slot into the Kabbalah. But again, this might be part of the second Magister, because again, looking at the psychology, and I've read Sapiens, and that's like the entire history of human beings in a very succinct manner, and that will go with a lot of the books that I've read or am reading about human society and the aeons in particular, the stages that human society goes through, because I'm fascinated with where we will go next and how we can move that forwards in the most positive way possible. So that's the 10 Types of Human by Dexter Dias. I quite like the name as well. And then in the middle here, we have these two books I'm reading in a sense as a religious text. So I tend to read these sorts of books on an ongoing way. I have them by the bed usually, and I read a little section in the morning or the evening and have them not in any particular order. I don't read through them page by page. I just dive into them, dig into them, sink into them, and then come back out of it again. But I will have this book around for probably 2 or 3 years as I use that in that way. And this is Adidas Gnosticon, so it's an entirely fairly comprehensive look at some of his work, and it's always fascinating, but quite often I have to submerge myself into it for just a few minutes and then think and dwell really with the presence of the words in a very different way than reading other books. So this tends to stick with me, and obviously this is quite a hefty tome. Similarly with Adashanti's Emptiness Dancing, someone, I think it was on the YouTube channel, had asked me if I'd read this, and it was like recommended as this must be read by everyone who is interested in the state of non-dualism. And I'm glad they recommended it because it just escaped my notice, and it's brilliant. It's just really straightforward, really clear writing, very down to earth and very powerful writing, and that fits in with the themes of the Gnosticon and Adidas teaching as well. So I'm reading that, and this is a travel book as well, so it will be something that when I'm traveling around, will have with me, and just to be able to sink into it, dip into it with the spirit of the place wherever I might be, even if that's a train station or something like that. Then finally, I've got to read through the Call of Cthulhu books. This is in my more, I guess, personal life. I was invited to, well, I sort of pushed myself, but I was semi-invited to do a Call of Cthulhu scenario that I wrote a couple of years ago called The Staircase, and we're going to run that in the group that I've recently joined, a role-playing group here in Cumbria in the Lake District. Great group of people. We have currently got 2 D&D adventures on the go, and we've got a Fallout campaign that we're running at the moment, which is post-apocalyptic science fiction role-playing game. And the Call of Cthulhu game that I've got in mind is what's called a one-shot. So it's probably a 1-session thing, and we're hoping to run it on Halloween. Apparently they have done for the last couple of years a Halloween special game for themselves, so this will fit in quite nicely. I've got a very, very creepy, mind-bending cosmic horror experience in store for them, but I just have to make sure that I'm going to read all of the rules again, and the Malleus Monstrorum and some of Sandy Peterson's wonderful work. I actually got to see, I think it was Paul Fricker, who I had no idea who he was, at the UK Games Exposition. And he told me that he was one of the people who'd worked on the 7th edition of this. And we talked very briefly about the sort of bringing H.P. Lovecraft into gaming, because obviously I have an esoteric interest in Lovecraft's work, and the entire fictional nature of the Necronomicon and stuff is of interest. So it's a bit weird when I'm playing a Call of Cthulhu game. It's why I didn't often play it in our old D&D times, but I think I've got better understanding of the boundaries between fictional role-playing fictional applied to actual, and actual drawing on the fictional. So I think we can have a great game of Call of Cthulhu. So I guess I'm going to have to dig out Lon's deck for that. So that'll be a joy. I might even try some colouring in, although I do have to do some painting as well at the moment for that's figure painting for the role-playing stuff. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That'll be interesting. So that's the sort of idea. I have several other books actually that I should mention that were kindly bought for me. I'll be thanking these people where they're named for World Tarot Day, where we do this great gifting initiative, and we all get to buy each other gifts. So I've got this. It's a do-it-yourself adventure journaling. Adventure, solo role-playing type of experience, and that's Journey by Luke Miller. This, which is also part of the next Magister, was very kindly bought for me as a gift. Sounds Wild and Broken. And again, I think this was a radio thing I was listening to, and it just sounded a fascinating book about sounds and about the way sounds surround us and the way we respond to sounds as a person, as culture, as a society, and how that's sort of changed the crisis of sensory extinction, because perhaps we're moving from wild to broken sounds surrounding us all of the time. I'm looking at you, TikTok. And Peter Spiegel, The Last Unicorn, again, I added to my list as a result of reading something else, and Biegel's work was described as being very nostalgic almost. Biegel's work was described as being very nostalgic, so I'm looking forward to reading that. I don't know quite how these are going to fit in with the other stuff I'm reading at the moment, but that's sort of about it. And then of course I'll go downstairs, trip over another book and think, oh, I need to add that to the reading pile, or I won't get round to reading the Dungeons and Dragons one because I'll be lost in one of the others. But generally speaking, that's roughly where I'm at with catching up with reading. So I hope perhaps some of this might interest you if you're interested in following up on any of these books, whether they're fiction or not. And if you'd like me to share more fictional work, particularly esoteric fiction, then I am reading some of that at the moment, and I have been digging back into some really classic 70s and 80s books, very tawdry occult novels of the time. And of course we have all of the classics like Diary of a Drug Fiend, Mean Child by Aleister Crowley, and The Dion Fortune, which I have talked about a bit in the past, but I'm happy to talk about those a little bit more and discuss those. Perhaps in the members only area, we can have a bit more in-depth discussion and some videos. I'm going to be doing at least one members only video as well as a public one for the Tarot Architect, and I look forward to sharing those with you. I am contractually obliged to point out we do have a members only area of this channel. It's only a minimum of $4.99. I think I priced it at a month, and I'm producing quite a bit of video material for that as well. So thanks a lot, and I hope some of this has inspired you to maybe go and find one or some of these books. And if you've got any suggestions of things that I ought to be reading, or that you want to discuss that you're reading that I might have read or not read, then please just drop a comment. That'd be wonderful. So now I'm going to tidy all of these up as I put the weight books back on the shelves for the first time in a decade, and it leaves a load of space to start exploring some new stuff as well. Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye for now.